Grab your cup of coffee. Sit down for a story. Let's all go exploring. Making it after 40. Making it after 40. Making it after 40.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Making It After 40 podcast. I am your host, Lisa Rodriguez. I am an actor and writer who is still trying to make it after the age of 40. On this show, we explore what it means to be an artist trying to make it as a middle-aged person. This week, my guest is actor, improviser, and writer Rich Baker. I met Rich through Second City when I was a wee improviser, and he was my teacher. You may not pick up on it in this episode, but through getting to know Rich over the years, I have found him to be one of the kindest, most considerate, and sweetest of souls around. As you'll hear in this chat, Rich has shifted his focus from acting to coaching, teaching, and working with corporations as a keynote speaker or by putting on workshops for them. Rich and I get into how the arts and business can learn from each other, whether that's through learning to listen, set boundaries, or simply remembering that your associates are people. So please take some time to enjoy Rich and I chatting away. Hello, Rich. How are you?
Hey. Good. How's it going?
Good. So on the show today, I have Rich Baker. Rich Baker was one of my early improv teachers. Actually, our relationship kind of had a rough start because when I was taking your class, I was getting married. And so I was going to miss like the first two classes, but I was told that like, that's fine. You can miss two classes. Mm-hmm. So when I showed up on the third class I was kind of like, who is this person who's now just joining the class? What the hell? And and you and I chatted about it. Like at the end of class, you're like, hey, look, when you showed up on week 3, expecting to do this class, I was like, oh boy, who is this chick?
Did I say that? Oh boy.
Yeah. Which is, I think, totally fair. And you did tell me like,
an
okay,
asshole.
No. You were just being fair. Cause I mean, like you show up, you haven't been in the class and now I just show up and it's like, I don't know, like improv 3 or something or improv 2. I don't even remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's fair but then like I worked really hard and you're like, okay, she's serious about it. She's not just screwing around.
Man, I sound so judgmental. I will say that from a teacher's perspective, the idea of like, you can miss the first 2 classes. It's like, I mean, we can do anything we want to. We're humans, we're adults. But at the same time, like, I think that was much more of Second City's like, we just want you to pay for the class. We'll whatever, like that kind of thing. Like,
give us your money,
which,
please.
Again, it was fine in your situation. I'm sure it's fine in a lot of situations. But, it's just like, ideally, it's like if I weren't concerned about the income from someone paying for the class, I'd be like, what might be better for you is if you waited till you could commit to the whole time. That way you'd get the most out of you'd be most of the ensemble, that kind of stuff. But unfortunately, we have to think in commerce when it comes to that thing. Yeah.
Now I did go to the other class that was happening at that time. Like I did makeup classes, right? But it's not the same when you're like trying to build trust and build a rapport with all the people that you're expected to like be a little bit vulnerable and put their like egos on the line. It does help to keep that consistent group of people.
Oh yeah. But as I recall, which I'm not the best at remembering stuff like that, but you just like got in there and assembled into the ensemble very, very quickly.
Yeah, well, because we had been taking class, that group, we had all been taking class together for a few times already.
Nice.
However many sessions in I can't remember which improv level it was, but like we had already kind of built a little bit of trust. So it was easy for me to get back in there. So Rich, you are an actor, an improviser, a teacher, and I believe you have your own business now doing coaching and whatnot. Mm-hmm. I know a lot has changed for you since we were last teacher-student relationship. So why don't you share with us what you're up to now?
Oh, thanks so much for asking. Yeah. So when the pandemic hit, I was already not doing super great financially just on my own. And then the pandemic made everything worse.
Yeah.
And I had 3 in-person gigs in 3 different states lined up like at the end of March, early April of 2020. And I was like, oh, thank goodness for these gigs, because they are literally going to sustain me and allow me to pay my rent for the next 2 months. And then they went away like that. And I was just like, ugh. And because I was, just like a contractor, I didn't have like an employer in the regular sense. I couldn't get unemployment. So I was like rock and hard place. I really thought, I mean, I've had the fear that I was going to have to pack up and move home to Texas like a million times, because it's just like the nervous energy and that imposter syndrome and all that stuff. But I was like, basically like, okay, I gotta do something now. I don't know what it is. And Second City had just transitioned to online, and I was 100% in the camp of, this isn't going to work online. It's just not going to work. It's not going to have the magic. Like the worst attitude of an improviser possible, of like, nah, that thing that we haven't tried yet, my imagination knows better. It's not going to work. It's like, oh my God, get over yourself. But I wasn't the only one. Like almost every one of my fellow teachers was in the same boat, and we were all gloriously wrong. Yeah. And anyway, so I had been teaching a class, and we did 2 weeks in person. Then we took a week off as the pandemic hit, just trying to figure out what to do. And Second City was like, we're going to do the rest online. And it was great. And it went really, really great. And every single student in my 16-person class emailed me separately, unbeknownst to each other, and asked the same 3 questions. They said, I really appreciate how you're handling this online class. Are they going to be shorter, like in duration? Are they going to charge less? And are they going to cap the max number of students at a lower number?
Oh, wow. Because
they understood, okay, this was a 16-person class in person. We're just adapting it to online. But if this is the way we're going further, and, at the time we were like, this is going to be at least the next semester is going to be like this. And it wound up being several more. But, they all had those same 3 questions. So I talked to the powers that be at Second City, at least the ones I had access to. And I said, look, I'm literally hearing this from every person. You should know this. Yeah. And I was completely ignored, which is kind of a thing that happens in corporations, not just the theater. So.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm giving you valuable insight from the people who are paying. Oh, you don't care? Okay, cool.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, and they can take their business elsewhere? Yeah, that's right. Oh, I forgot about that part.
It's so weird. But so anyway, it just, the thought occurred to me, like when I was teaching online for Second City, I'm like, this is the only thing that Second City has on me is the name and the classroom space. And right now the classroom space is, $15 a month Zoom account. So I got a Zoom account, and I just started, I advertised an independent workshop for online for the first time ever. And it's hilarious because I had no idea what to charge. So it was my first, in April 2020, I did a workshop. I don't remember what it was called, some improv something. And it was $4 per person.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Rich.
I know. I had such, and I mean, it's still something that I still work on, but like, especially back then and for most of my life, just the idea of charging people for my time. I'm like, what? It's just me. Like, why would I, and just this idea of, it's like, oh no, your time is extremely valuable no matter who you are. Yeah. And especially if you're offering skills and it's not. But anyway, I didn't. And so I had a very well-meaning student with your same attitude who emailed me like right after the workshop and said, I had a very much fun time in your workshop, and I would gladly pay more than $4 for it. And that was really the thing that made me go, okay, I'm offering something that people actually find valuable, that they're willing to pay for. So I started doing what I'd never heard of before, which is these improv practice groups. And there's these groups that meet weekly, and it's kind of like your weekly bowling night or your weekly knitting club, and it's like, this is your weekly improv club kind of thing. And it, it's sharpens your skills. It's about laughter and support and, all this, it gives you a community and all this fun stuff. And they took off. And I started one weekly one, and it filled up. And I started another one and another one. And at one point during the pandemic, I had like 8 weekly classes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I basically, and my writing partner put it like this, and it kind of intimidated me when he said it, but he goes, oh, you're a school. And I went, oh, I guess I am a school. Like I'm a one teacher school, but I'm a school.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. And so is it still going then? Are you still doing the practice groups? And I know
Yeah.
you've always done private coaching, but
Yeah. So I do private coaching online or in person, but the practice groups, I still have 5 going on weekly right now. And then occasionally I have like a long form one jumping on. So I have 6, and then I do random workshops and stuff as well. So it's a full-time kind of thing, as far as not the actual teaching full-time, but like the marketing, the building, the creating, the fun, like all it together, like it's well more
yeah.
than full-time.
That's awesome. And then of course you have your improv shows that you do around town,
Mhm.
including Monologues and Mayhem, which
Which
invited
you were
me to be
in.
part of. Yes, that was so fun. I like felt so honored to be asked. I'm always like, I don't know. This is gonna sound like poor me or woe is me, but I'm always like, how come nobody asks me to do anything? And then
You kind of sounded like Eeyore there when you said that. It was nice.
yeah. And then you invited me, so I felt very honored and very seen. Yes.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you did great. You told great stories. You were super
Oh,
fun.
thank you.
And I think the reason I thought about you is because of this podcast. Like, I think
Yeah.
I was listening to an episode, or I saw you, marketing an episode or something. And I was like, oh my God, Lisa would be great at this.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It was a great time, and then it introduced me to the Glendale Room, which I've gone back to at least once, and I hope to go back to again. I want to especially support the Straight for Pay shows on Tuesday nights. I've heard that those are really fun.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I want us to go back and get your history on how you got into performing in the first place. I know a little bit from what I remember, like when we like had drinks after that infamous workshop or infamous class. I believe from what I can recall, you started in high school doing comedy sports, and like you were kind of, if I recall, you were kind of a shy guy, and it kind of got you out of your shell. But maybe I'm misremembering.
Some of that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So
How about I just let you tell your story? I don't know.
listen, it's your
Novel
podcast. If you want to
idea.
tell my story and I'll give you notes afterwards, that's up to you. Right?
Yeah. I love to
I
hear
was like
your journey. Yeah.
I loved performing even as a kid. I was like extremely shy, but I just like the idea of like getting up and doing things. Like I would put on little skits for my parents who would indulge me with their, I don't even know if they're paying attention, but they'd let me just do my thing and not tell me to stop. But I was like super stage fright, but I loved all of it. So I loved art, I loved singing, I loved acting, all these different things. And so I got into choirs when I was like in 4th or 5th grade, and just being in a choir, not even on the front row of a choir, and like being there in front of an audience was scary to me at the time, but I got used to that. And then,
by the way, that is like a hidden talent that I didn't know about until you posted a video of you singing in Texas. I was like, holy crap, Rich has a voice.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah,
that was my
talented.
first love, was singing.
Yeah.
And that's what got me on stage. So I sang in these choirs. And then in 6th grade, the choirs would put on these concerts that would have solos, which was a new thing.
Yeah.
And you could audition, you could pitch yourself as a soloist and audition, basically. And not everyone wanted a solo, but of those who did, we would audition. And my 6th grade year, they gave me a solo in a Christmas concert. And you want to talk about stage fright? I mean, I still remember how it felt. 40 whatever years later. And it was, I could barely move. I was shaking. Like everything was just like, I don't know how I sang. Everything was dry. My throat was like the desert, and I got through it somehow.
Yeah.
And then the next solo was also scary, but slightly less. And eventually got to the point to where, okay, I can sing in front of people now. So let's try acting. So in high school, I tried the acting thing, and that made me nervous as hell. Got over that. And then eventually became improv and stand up. And then at some point it got to the point where it's like, okay, there's nothing on a stage that frightens me anymore. But it took like every little bit. And the improv part was, I think I was really ready for improv because I'd done the acting and the singing. So when I ran into that, there was this group called 4-Day Weekend when I was 17. I didn't know who they were. There was an improv troupe in Fort Worth, Texas. No one knew what improv was in Fort Worth, Texas at the time. No one knew what improv was in most cities at the time. Even in Chicago at the time, there was probably half or more of the population that didn't even know that term. And they just blew me away. Just blew me out of the water. I was like, what is it? And I didn't believe them. I didn't believe they were improvised. So I went back every week trying to catch them rewriting a script or something. And after like 6 weeks, the main guy, he was like, you're here every week. What's up with you? And I was like, are you really improvising this? He's like, yeah. I was like, how? And he goes, we got classes. So I started taking classes, and then Like of all the art forms, and I still love improv, seemed like the one that just felt like, as far as the business of it and the temperament of it and all that kind of stuff, just kind of felt right at the time. And even though I still do all of it, improv is clearly the thing I've done the most of.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And then at what point, I believe, did you end up in Chicago?
Yeah, that was the goal. Yeah, once I started doing improv, I started my college troupe at TCU with a couple other guys. And they were a little more ambitious about it than I was. I was just like, oh, I'll start a troupe. I didn't have anything beyond that. And they were like, oh yeah, we're prepping ourselves to move to Chicago because we want to study improv with the pros. And I went, oh, sounds good. I'm in. I don't know if they invited me or not, but I definitely glommed onto that. And we wound up meeting another guy in Dallas that we did some improv with over there, and he wound up moving to us. So 4 Texas boys, never been to Chicago, didn't know anyone up there, just kind of got in a U-Haul and drove up several states and try to make a go of it.
Yeah. And there you were involved with the Annoyance, right? And Second City? I'm trying to remember.
I love your guessing. You're like, this is like...
I'm trying to, because I feel like sometimes I mix up teachers' backgrounds, and I could have sworn you did the Annoyance. But
yeah, no, I mean, I saw shows of the Annoyance. I think I did one thing of the Annoyance, but I really wasn't that involved with the Annoyance. I got hired by Comedy Sports right away. I was enrolled in Second City and IO classes right away. Okay. And then I wound up doing a bunch of things like the Comedy Shrine in Naperville and LOL in Schaumburg and Mission Improbable touring troupe out of Chicago doing universities and stuff. And then I got hired by Second City in 2009 to be a teacher. And then the next year in 2010 to be a performer. So I did eventually get in there, but not right away.
Wow, that's awesome. So then, I mean, like that, I feel like you had to go through all the ranks to become a teacher. Like, how do they pick the teachers like that? It seems like you were pretty young when you started teaching, if it was 2009.
Yeah, I was 28 when I started teaching at Second City. But, I love the way you worded it. Like, how do they pick the teachers? As if it's this organized process where, a committee comes together and they're like, all right, we need new teachers. What are we going to do about it? It's like, couldn't be further away from that organization as possible. The way I started my first class was at Comedy Sports Chicago. I was only working there a year. I got hired in spring of 2006. And in 2000, I wanted to teach, but everyone who was a teacher there had been in the ensemble for years. They didn't want some rookie there. And so it was just right after my first year anniversary of being in the ensemble as a performer that one of the teachers was flying back from a gig to teach a class that night. Plane got delayed. So they needed a teacher last minute. Okay. And as soon as I saw the email, I fired one back to the teacher and the artistic director. And I said, I can do it. Yeah. And about an hour later, the artistic director got back to me and he's like, well, no one else is available. So I guess you're in. And at least I was so excited. Like I was, I felt like I was like on the track with my feet in the thing. And I'm just like, fire the gun. I want to run kind of thing, And so I was so energized. And the deal was this was a level 2 class at Comedy Sports and it was their last day of the term. So it's kind of a weird time to be subbing, but I came in guns blazing and I was awesome. I was on fire. I was doing everything. I mean, I know I'm a better teacher now than I was, but that particular night, like I was just so like my energy was way more than my skills and it made things work. And I made them laugh. Like I was like doing a stand-up routine. I was making them laugh so much while we're going through it. And so what happened was after that day, it was supposed to be just a one-time thing. All right, you got in. Maybe we'll let you sub again in the future. But in that class, I think it was like 12 students that class. And I think 8 or 9 of them emailed the artistic director and said, can this guy be our level 3 teacher?
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And the artistic director had a meeting with me and he goes, I've never seen this before, but they are requesting you. And I was like, oh, and he goes, so if I'm going to give you a shot if you're ready. And I said, yeah. And so I taught my first full level right after that. And then they kept me on the schedule and I just kept teaching Comedy Sports. And then when I started working at the Comedy Shrine, I started teaching there. And then I was coaching independent teams. So by the time I was 28 at Second City hiring me, I had 3 years of fairly dense resume of teaching and coaching.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think gave you the confidence to just like jump up and know that you could do it? Because like for me, I know like I'm in a place where it's like, hey, I love doing improv. I have a good time at it. I know that I'm not the best improviser, but I have fun and I can like be a good teammate and all that. So I would never
Great.
think like I'm going to go out and teach. I just don't have that confidence. What gave you the confidence to just be like, yeah, man, this is my destiny. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this: if I were to say, "Hey, Lisa, I've never hosted my own podcast before. Could you teach me how to host a podcast?" Would you feel confident in that?
Yes, I would.
Yeah. Why?
Yeah. Because I feel like I'm really good at it.
There
And
you
I
go.
feel like
Yeah.
I've like had enough, like done enough research and like, yeah.
Yeah.
So there you
So,
go.
like, in 2006, I had been improvising for 7 years. And I'd done so with several different troupes and in 2 different cities, and I'd even done some professional and been paid and this, that, and the other. So like, I guess it'd been 8 years. I started in 2007. So like, and also I'm very much, when I take classes, I don't even intend to do this, but I'm also critiquing the teacher, like while I'm doing it. Right. Like I'm not trying to be an asshole and I'm not getting in the way of the class. Like I'm learning, but I'm also like taking notes on how they teach. And I had famous teachers and I had non-famous teachers and I had good teachers and I had shit teachers, and they were not always, they did not always correlate. And my thing was, okay, just do what the good teachers did. Don't do what the bad teachers did. And then have a little room for experimentation of new stuff that I want to try, in the vein of, I always ask myself, like, what's it like to be a student in my class? And if I feel like their time's being wasted, if I feel like they're bored, if I'm not challenging them, whatever it is, I'm always going, okay, I felt like that 5 minutes in the middle of class there was kind of weird. What happened there? How can I avoid that in the future? So I'm always thinking that. When I was thinking that way, even before I had an opportunity to teach.
Yeah. Wow. Well, there you go. You like were gearing up for it this whole time. That's awesome. Well, I mean, I think it was the right choice, obviously.
Well, thanks.
It's been quite successful for you.
I love teaching because I love, just like you said, like, you have fun with it. You're a supportive teammate. And I want to facilitate more of that. I want to facilitate more fun, more support, more laughter. Like, it's amazing to me because in my life, I laugh all the time. It's my job. But so many people don't laugh as much in a week as I can do in 2 hours, or as my students can do in 2 hours. And it's like, that's a gift to people, to give them a situation to where they can feel safe and inspired to just laugh. Yeah.
And it's fun. I'm sure it's fun to really see people come out of their comfort zones, because you get people from like all different walks of life. It's not just actors taking these classes.
No.
So I'm sure it's fun to see like people who've never done this before, like find something new within themselves that they didn't know that they were capable of.
Oh, 100%. And that's kind of a funny thing. The difference between Chicago and LA was, in Chicago, I would say my average class, even at the Second City, the number of actors in it, the people in the biz who were using it to try and do something professional, was maybe 20%.
Yeah.
Maybe 30.
Oh, wow.
I moved to LA and it's like 95%.
Yeah.
It was novel to find like a housewife or a lawyer in LA. It happened, but like in Chicago, that was the normal.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That not dynamic. That
just the demographics. This is an industry town in LA, right?
Yeah.
And I did not realize how industry it was until like I taught my first class, and I went, "You're all actors?" Like, wow.
Yeah, I'm just taking my improv class, so it looks good on my resume for commercial auditions, right? That's always the line.
Yeah, which is, I mean, I could go on a whole rant about that, because when commercials ask you to audition, what they're really asking you to do is write.
Mm-hmm.
They're asking you to write new dialogue in the moment, right? And in improv, some of that happens, but I would say it's more ensemble based. So like you can take a standard improv class and it can help you at auditions and scripted stuff. But there's particular, like when I teach improv for scripted actors, there are different things that I focus on with them, because I'm like, look, ensemble improv is awesome, but if that's not your goal, then, and you're just trying to get better auditions, that's not necessarily like that's a tool that can help, but there's way better tools in improv that can help you with that part.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So then at what point do you start looking to do this professionally, getting reps, and then at some point obviously you moved out to LA to pursue the business in that avenue. What was was there a catalyst?
My goal since I was 17 was, how do I turn performing into a living?
Yeah.
And so I was always aimed on that. And so the last time I had a day job of any sorts was December 31st, 2007.
Oh, wow.
And I remember walking out of an office building in River North, Chicago, going, I don't ever want to walk into an office building again as an employee.
Yeah.
And I haven't yet. But it's been quite a struggle. But that was, so to make it professionally in Chicago, it was a lot of coaching, a lot of teaching, a lot of performing marketing gigs. And I did get paid to perform from different places like Mission Improbable, Comedy Sports, and Second City. So that was huge. And then when Second City put me on the cruise ships, that was like the best professional time in my life, because I only had one job.
Yeah.
And I've never only had one job. And that sounds great. But it wasn't a job. Like, it wasn't like, clock in and, put on a tie. And it was performing. It was improvising and doing sketch. And it was living on a cruise ship. I don't know. That was great. And then so when I moved out here, I thought my goal at the time was make it as an actor, scripted, this, that, and the other. And it just never worked for me. I had a lot of people tell me I had a lot of potential, a lot of callbacks, check avails, different things like that. But at no point did it ever turn over. Yeah. And the unfortunate thing that I did, which I never, if anyone's listening to this wants to be an actor, the thing I recommend you the most, if you have the type of personality that I do, which a lot of people do, which is risk-averse personalities, right? Where you do not thrive when you are under financial stress, then my advice to you is not to move out here trying to get acting work to pay the bills.
Yeah.
Because it's if you put too much stake in it, like Arnold Schwarzenegger was already a millionaire before he was starting to do movies. And like, that's unrealistic for most of us. But like, he was able to not take the crap roles that he didn't want to take, or even do the auditions he didn't want to do, because he was like, I'm not doing this for a living. I'm doing it for what I want to do. Someone asked me recently, they were like, I want to do cartoon voices. Should I put together a voiceover commercial reel? And I'm like, if you want to do voiceover commercials, yes. But I said, if you just want to do cartoons and you already, like, he's a lawyer. I'm like, if you have a job, you don't need to do commercials for a living. That's why voice actors do commercials. It's just do free stuff, do your own stuff, do cartoon voices, and then maybe one day you'll get paid for it. But like, don't try and do the paid route to do something that you just really want to do for fun.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I think that is really solid advice. And like, with all the people that I interview, that's kind of like the biggest thing, is like, having that financial strain really makes an impact in how successful you can be and how dedicated you can be to the craft. Because if you can't afford the classes, or if you're like not eating in order to take class, whatever it is, it can really burn you out. Yeah. And as you get into middle age, then you're starting to realize, okay, well, like, do I have any money to live off of in the long run?
What's this thing called a retirement account people keep talking about? Investments? What the hell is that? And it's like, you're like, oh shit, I'm in my 40s. And
do I have
spent my 20s and 30s being so bohemian that I feel a little stressed out right now.
Yeah. Well, and one of my favorite guests was Charles Green, and he had come out here in his 20s, had some success, but nothing major. And then he just decided, you know what? I can't live with this much insecurity. I need stability. So he went back, got a degree, became a marketing guy for the CDC, which took him out to Atlanta, Georgia. And then when he hit about 53, he was like, oh, I'm going to retire soon. Maybe I should take an acting class again. And little did he know, Hollywood had come to Atlanta at that point. Yep. Now he's in his 60s. He's booking like 10 shows a year. He's like working constantly, and he's having the career that he always wanted, but in retirement, and he doesn't need it. He's just doing it for fun. And I mean, like, I often think like that might be the route for me. Like, I have have a rep for theatrical, but I'm like you, like I get callbacks. I get so far, but I never get the job. I'm like,
Mhm.
well, maybe it's just not out there for me right now. Maybe I still have to age into my type a little bit more or something. I don't know.
And I'm sure I'm not telling you anything that you don't also believe. Tell me your opinion on this. But like, the older I get, the more I realize that luck and circumstances just plays a lot into everything, right? Like, I just
Yeah.
read Dave Grohl's book, great book, and
Yes, that book is so good.
oh, it's so good. And like, does Dave Grohl, is he talented? Does he deserve to be where he is? Absolutely, of course. And the band that he was most obsessed with and knew all their songs happened to need a drummer when he was 18 and just old enough to drum with them. And he knew all their, and like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of extremely talented drummers out there that, are not, and there's a lot of extremely talented actors and podcasters and comedians and all these kind of different people that luck and circumstances we can't control. And it used to bother me so much of like, why'd that guy get this or that girl get this and I didn't get this? And it's like, you can't control that. So like worrying about it is just stressful and it doesn't help anything. So I just like, oh, luck and circumstances didn't work out that time. I'm okay. I booked a pilot when I very first moved to LA and I thought, I'm in. This is it.
Yeah.
I'm 6 weeks into living in LA. It's like my third audition. It's a pilot. I knew what a pilot was, but I didn't really understand what all was involved with it. And I was like, I'm in. Turns out anyone, if you're not in LA, you may not know this, but anyone can write a script and hold an audition and say that you're auditioning for a pilot. Anyone can do that. I could do that. You could do that. We do that right now.
Yeah.
But he didn't have like funding or anything. It was a really good script. And I'll to this day, I maintain, I was like, I hate that never got made. Yeah. But I didn't know anything about the industry really when I first moved here. And so I thought, oh, he's got this great script. It's just a matter of time before it gets picked up. And I'm like, oh, there's 100,000 great scripts that have never been made in this town and one's made every day. Okay, never mind. Yeah. And so like we filmed some stuff for a Kickstarter campaign and he had the Kickstarter campaign and he didn't get enough money in the Kickstarter campaign to even film the pilot. He shopped the script around for like 2 years, never got anything and wound up moving back to New York. Again, great script. And I thought everything was there. And it just, if that had gotten picked up, who knows? Maybe I'd be, an actor of note at this point, but it didn't. And that's okay.
Yeah. And you have to be okay with that lack of control because I think that's like the biggest, besides the financial part. Yeah. The other biggest part is understanding that you have no control over your career because like you just said, you can have so much talent, you can have a great script, but if you don't get picked, you don't get picked. It's just not for you.
Yeah.
And then you just have to let it go and move on. But I think having other things that you can do really help. Like for me, having this podcast is something that I can control and I can put out there and it like feeds a certain part of my creative soul and my, like what I feel is like my purpose, which is connecting people and like telling, helping people get their stories out there. That's been really fun. And then there's always writing, Frank Coyote in his episode talked about, just write it. Even if it's for nobody else, just write it for yourself.
Yeah. We're artists. If we don't use the machine that helps create stuff enough, then it bothers us.
Yeah. Yeah. Another guest talked about just like, take the class, whatever it is. Like, people play golf. They don't play golf looking for a result because they're going to then become a professional golfer. They just take golf. So take the stand-up class, try something new, take the improv class, take the ceramics class. It doesn't have to be for your specific art. Like just do something that's feeding that creative soul. That's a way to survive.
Absolutely. I think that one reason why Buddhism might be so popular out here is because that idea of like let go of control, like we have to adhere to that. Seriously,
otherwise the city will eat you alive.
Yep, as it does many people all the time.
Yeah, there's so with my day job in property management, I meet so many people who are from LA and who just like work in industries other than entertainment. And I think that is really grounding to be around people who have nothing to do with it and either don't care or they're just not involved with it. They're like, okay, whatever,
Yeah.
That is really helpful to find a group of people that have nothing to do with the business as well.
Yeah. My buddy plays on a softball team with a bunch of non-actor, non-biz people, and he says that helps ground him. I'm just like, oh yeah, they're talking about things that have nothing to do with auditions or producers or, the writer's strike is a news story, but like it's just like talking about like a hurricane. It's just another news story to them. It's not like affecting their livelihood or anything.
Yeah. Well, what is on the table for you next? Like what do you see for yourself as you continue to grow and develop your career? I know you've done a lot of writing and writing pilots, and you have a writing partner, and you guys have had some successes with your pilots and whatnot.
Yeah, as far as we've gone far in some competitions. We're highly ranked on Coverfly, and we've had some meetings here and there and that kind of stuff, which is great. We're just still plugging away at that, and writing and looking to potentially produce something we wrote. So we wrote a web series called Third Shift. We made it. It rocked. It got a lot of festival love, but unfortunately web series is, there's not really anything monetarily no one's buying them. So, but it got a lot of love. And so now we're like, all right, how can we position ourselves to make an actual movie on our own, just independently make it, write it, make it, and then get that in the same kind of festival circuit that the things were going. So, we don't have anything. We don't have like, this is happening right now. We're still, juggling a lot of stuff, taking on meetings, different things like that. But we've been together for 5-6 years now, and we show no signs of slowing. So we're in it for the long haul. He's the same age, so we're both, pushing 42 right now, and we're just like, okay, it'll happen.
Yeah.
Or it won't.
Just keep going. Do you see writing kind of being your focus, or do you still want to go out? Do you still go out for auditions and whatnot?
Yeah. Do I see writing as being a focus? Not as far as my career is concerned, but I do want it to be a big part of, we're talking about earlier, of just like that joy of creation. I'll talk about that in a second. But as far as auditioning, like if something lands in my lap, like someone I know is shooting something and they want me to audition, I've done a handful of those over the last few years, but I let go of my agent years ago. I just said, this auditioning lifestyle just doesn't feel right for me. Like, I'm not judging it as bad or anything. I got plenty of friends who've got plenty of success from it. It just felt like, I get that this is the standard way to go in LA. And I don't know, it just felt like a suit that didn't fit. So I stopped doing that. And I want to do more kind of what we're talking about. So my thing really is doing more corporate improv training.
Yeah.
Because that is not only satisfying, it's performing, it's teaching, it's bringing the art to, the muggles who are not performers and creative people necessarily. And it pays. And then when I get that going, then my goal is to do what we're talking about with your friend, of just do the stuff I want to do. Like I have several novels that I've half written, but one particularly that I'm like, I want to finish this. And so at some point my gift to myself is going to be, okay, I'm going to go for 4 days to some kind of random Airbnb in the desert or something and just write for 4 days, to give myself a little writer's retreat, that kind of stuff. I think that's what's going to heal my soul a lot. Getting into stand-up again. I miss stand-up a lot. Again, not to do it for a living, but just to do it because I love it.
Yeah, just for fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me more about the corporate stuff. That sounds really exciting. And I don't know. Like I said, when I do the property management, like what really gets me excited about doing that job is finding the companies, the people who like see people as people and not just like, oh, this is the property. These are the tenants. We have to deal with them because they pay the bills. But no, we're actually engaging with them because they're here like 8 to 10 hours a day and this is their life. And like, what are the things that we can do at this place to make it better? Or like when you've got retail people, this is their entire life. You got a mom and pop. This is everything. Like, let's help them make their business successful. And then even when it comes with working with vendors and stuff like that, I think it's really important to like kind of bring that, like you look at everybody as your customer. It's your coworkers, it's your vendors, it's your actual tenants, it's the ownership. And to me, I think when you bring all that together, that makes everybody successful. And it's like something that seems so like capitalistic as like buying and owning properties and leasing them out for money can actually become something where you're doing something good and innovative and neat. And, like even in some places, people are making sure that their buildings are like LEED certified. So they're green, or incorporating like beehives at the property. So they're like doing something, maybe they have a roof garden. There's all different kinds of things that properties are starting to do. And I feel like when we bring back the person aspect to corporations, which I feel like you can do that with like that, I would feel like the improv would help facilitate that. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I love everything that you're saying, Lisa. And it's, at some point in history, maybe, their economics wasn't always a thing because there wasn't always money. But at some point, people started like treating other people like they were property or money or, assets or liabilities more than people. Obviously, slavery notwithstanding, where they were literally just property, but like just this, and we still have to this day where, I remember a long time ago, this guy who was trying to sell me on Amway was like, do you think companies see you as an asset? They see you as a liability. That's why you got to work for yourself and all this stuff. But so my entity that I do corporate work with is called Play Like a Team, playlikeateam.com. And it's all about as people, how are we communicating with people in a way that is actually human, right? How are we getting out of our own heads, getting connected with people? How can we make people in meetings feel heard? How can we make employees feel like they matter, like they value?
Yes.
Right. How our creativity, our adaptability, our teams, our leadership specifically. These are the things that I speak on when I do keynote speaking or when I do workshop facilitation of just trying, I don't sell it like this because I think it would sound too hippy dippy for a lot of people, but it's exactly what you're saying of bringing the humanity back to business.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I'm not saying we should all, every morning in the office get together and sing Kumbaya. I'm saying we should treat each other like people, that we should find ways to make the relationships better, because when the working relationships among people in your own company are better, then every aspect of your company is better, right? How you treat the vendors, how you treat the clients, how you treat the customers, how you treat the janitor, like all these things matter. And so much of corporation is this, like low vibe kind of, I'm not really listening to you. I'm talking at you, you should do what you say because I can fire you, your job, do it out of fear. It's like that classic Godfather, do you want to be loved or feared? And and he said feared, because if you're running an illegal mafia, that is probably exactly what you want. But if companies are running legit, actual human companies, I think they should want to be loved and cared for. And I'd say employee retention is a big buzzword, because it costs so much to take on new employees and train them, and they want to leave. And so companies will be like, well, if we treat them well and they still leave, what do we get out of that? And I'm like, look, you can't, exactly what we were talking about earlier, Lisa, is you cannot control whether they leave or not.
Yeah.
You can control your company. You control the environment that they work in, and you can make that inviting, and you can give them opportunities for growth and to be heard and all these things, but you can't force them to stay. So it's like, you have to be okay when they do leave and wish them luck. And the same way that when a customer doesn't buy what you're selling, you don't be like, well, screw you if you're not going to buy from me. Like, you're just like, hey, thanks for listening to me. Thanks for taking the time. If I can answer any more questions, if there's anything you want, you got my number, that kind of thing. Right. And then, and they may never come to you again, but you've set the environment to where they can. Right.
Yes.
And that's the same thing with employee retention or any of this stuff that we're talking about, is how can we do what we can on our part to be the best version of ourselves for that goal, for this humanity goal.
I think all of that is so brilliant. And I do think that that's the future of business. Do you follow Adam Grant, or have you read his books? Okay. So
I've read several books. Love him.
I haven't read his books, but I've listened to him on Armchair Expert, and I follow him on Instagram. And I think like he is so brilliant. And I like would love to just like, I feel like I want to every new boss that I have, here's a book. If you haven't read it yet, you should read this book.
Yeah. Oh man, I got a bunch of authors that we could talk about. Seth Godin's one of my favorites, and then I got plenty that we could talk about.
Yeah, but that's just it. Like bringing the humanity back to these corporations, bringing the humanity back to the workplace. Because I do think that like, obviously the millennial generation, they're not taking it. They're making changes. And now Gen Z is going to be coming up, and they're already showing that they're over all the archaic rules and systems that we have in place. Thank
goodness someone is.
I know.
Our generation just took it and like, I guess this is what we're supposed to do.
Yeah. And so like people are over it. Have you heard of the phenomenon of quiet quitting?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just learned about that recently. And I was like, holy crap, that's what people are doing. And there was an experience that I heard of recently where someone was doing that with someone that I know. And they just ended up having a conversation with a guy. And he came around and he's like, yeah, okay. Like I do want to work. And they just they weren't giving him the support that he needed. They were so
Yeah.
busy. They didn't have time for him. So I think he was really struggling in his position and he didn't know what he was supposed to be doing. But rather than like either speak up or his bosses weren't paying attention,
Yeah.
you know, and once they kind of realized what was going on, they've been able to like give him the tools and he's still with the company. But that just goes back to like that listening and hearing each other. I do think that listening element in improv and acting and Meisner, whatever, like that's like the biggest thing is listening. And when you take that into your workplace, you can be so much more successful because when you really listen to what the people are saying, like you can actually give them what they need in many cases.
I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's something to the effect of 65% of American drivers think they are above average at driving. Right?
Yes,
Which clearly they cannot be, right? And it's less about what the real numbers are and more about how our brains think. And so people understand that driving is not something you are born with knowing how to do, that you have to learn how to do it, but they think they're good at it. Listening, unless you've got like a medical issue or something, listening is something that you're doing since birth. And everyone, like more like 100% of people think they're good at listening. And in my experience, maybe 20% of people are actually good at it. So convincing people that better listening is one, possible, two, that they have room to grow, and three, that how much better it will make their interactions, will make their meetings, will make their sales, will make all this stuff is... Sometimes the hard part is selling them on the fact that actually you have an issue. I hate that the beauty business and different other businesses like pretend that we have problems with our bodies to try and sell us shit. Like I hate that. But I do think that there are some problems that we don't know that we have, that it's like, oh, this would really help everybody. I'm not trying to tell you wrong. I'm trying to show you what potential you have.
Yeah, it's that self-awareness. If we could all just be a little bit more self-aware, you'd be amazed at like how much good can come of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like going from black and white to color in The Wizard of Oz. It's like it's a whole new world once you start really paying attention.
Yeah. I had someone point out to me, again, this I keep referring to past guests, but this was a past guest who I had done a couple of like mini coaching sessions with. She pointed out to me the things that I was saying. She's like, you're kind of like making yourself the victim. And I was like, oh my God. I just didn't see it. I didn't see it because I thought I had done so much work on myself already and I was fine. Right. And then when she pointed that out, like it really has changed the way I look at things. And it's been a game. It's like you said, going from black and white to color. It's been huge.
So that troupe that I first saw 4-Day Weekend that I told you about, when I first went there, I didn't give any suggestions because I was just like fascinated by what it was. And then the more I went, the more comfortable I got, like, oh, they need a suggestion right now. And it started to occur to me like, oh, if I give them more interesting suggestions, they'll probably have more fun on stage. So I was there. I remember there's one show, it's probably like 7th show in a row seeing them. And I was just shouting. I had suggestions at the ready every time they asked for one. And at one point, the host goes, we've heard enough out of you, someone else. And afterwards, the main guy who had already kind of talked with friends, and he was like, hey, man, I was 21. So he knew that I was just some dumb kid, which I was because he could have come out and just yelled at me. But he came out and he was like, hey, man, I really appreciate you. You come and support us. You buy a ticket. You're really there for us. But like, we have 212 seats. We want everyone to have access to give suggestions. And if you're giving all of them, then it kind of looks like we might have you as an audience plant or something like that. And I went, oh, and I had no idea. I was just in the moment having fun, totally unaware of what I was doing. And like, that was a huge eye opener for me of like, what are the circumstances? What's the environment? What is read the room, Baker kind of stuff.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that story. That's a really good reflection. Okay. So I know we're running out of time. What advice would you have to anyone who is coming up in their creative field? I mean, you kind of gave some advice already, but is there anything else that you would suggest to somebody who's either they could be young or maybe they're middle age and they're switching careers?
I mean, there's so much, but I'd say the most important thing that I was probably missing at the time was that while your career is important, if you make that the most important thing in your life, it is very likely that you are not paying attention to certain things that could help you, like your own mental health, psychological health, or your own physical health, your relationships, your family, things of that nature. And I believe now in my 40s, something that I did not believe in my 20s, which is that being a whole person in whatever way that means to you is better than just all my eggs are in the career basket kind of thing.
Yeah.
So have your friends, have people that you care about, you can connect with, right? Have a hobby, something you can do with your time and your energy that's not your career. And it's so important to have that because I never had hobbies. And I was wondering why I was burned out all the time. And it's like your brain needs variety. Do something different every once in a while.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. That mental health aspect is so important when you're doing something where you're constantly being rejected or you feel like you're constantly hitting brick walls.
Sure.
Yeah. And then what does making it mean to you now versus when you were younger? So what does success look like to you?
When I was younger, I used to think as long as I can pay my bills doing non-day job stuff that's artistically creative, that's my goal. And my goal is now is I just want to be making it is I'm not worried about money and I can do art in a way that makes me feel fulfilled and fun, not out of desperation, but out of joy and exploration.
That's really succinct.
Thanks.
That's great. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Well, I hope that we can all achieve that.
Amen.
Desperate art is not good art.
So every once in a while you get, but I'd say it's got a low batting average.
Yeah. There was the meme that I like that's going around right now is AI can't actually make art because it doesn't have the first. AI can't be horny, which is the first ingredient to making art.
Truth. I wrote. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I thought that was well said. Yeah.
Well done.
I wish I could credit whoever it was. It was someone on the internet. It wasn't me. That's the most.
Ironically, it was artificial intelligence generated.
Yeah, it was AI generated. Rich, it's been so great chatting with you.
Great talking to you, Lisa. Thanks for having me on your show. I'm very excited to listen to it for a while.
Yeah, I really appreciate everything that you shared, and I really enjoy your perspective. I think you have a unique perspective on all this, and I think it's been really interesting how you are transitioning your career into the corporate stuff and seeing how the art can benefit. What did you call them? The muggles? The muggles,
yeah. The people who would be terrified to hear that we go on stage that we go on stage, period, would scare them, right? And it's great. I love talking to you people because you have so much room for growth that I can help with.
Yeah. Because I think that's important in order for art to be appreciated, for it to kind of be incorporated in the lives of people who don't have access to it on a daily basis. So I think that's a really great mission, and I wish you the most success with it. And if I can connect you in any way to any of the corporations that I'm involved with, I will endeavor to do so.
I will. Don't threaten me with a good time.
All right, Rich. Well, I will talk to you soon, and thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening to this week's episode. You can follow Rich on Instagram at Rich Baker Coaching. If you're interested in hiring Rich, check out his company, playlikeateam.com. Or if you simply want some coaching, go to richbakercoaching.com. I'm going to link all this in the show notes with a couple of extra links, including his LinkedIn profile. You can sign up for his twice-a-month email blast, or he's got a link where you can do a free online drop-in class. So check those out if that resonates with you. If you're loving the show, please do not forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. Thank you to those who have given me reviews recently. I can't tell you how awesome that is. Follow us on Instagram at Making It After 40, the number 40. And to see what I'm up to when I'm not podcasting, check out my Instagram at Lisa Royriguez. That's ROIRIGUEZ. All right, everyone, just a little reminder. Next week is going to be my 1-year anniversary show. I can't even believe I've been doing this for 1 year. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be an exciting one. Thank you all for listening and have an excellent week.